Next, we would like to move on to the presentation from Table 2, entitled Nuclear Politics, What We Can Do for a World Free of Nuclear Weapons. Even in the 21st century, nuclear weapons continue to play a considerable role in international relations. Table 2 has sought ways to rethink the status quo surrounding nuclear weapons on a zero basis. The participants with various backgrounds have joined discussion from India, Vietnam, Taiwan, Brazil, Chile, and Japan. In addition to monthly sessions, they have talked with various professionals in the field, such as a university professor, activist, and former cleanup veteran. As a result, they have produced a policy proposal for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan. From now on, Table 2 will show you how youth think about the issue and what they wish the political entities to do.
次にテーブル2、核の政治、核なき世界のために私たちにできることによる発表をお届けいたします。21世紀の今日においても、核兵器は国際関係の中で非常に重要な役割を担っております。そのような現状を一から考え直す方法をテーブル2は模索してまいりました。インド、ベトナム、台湾、ブラジル、チリ、そして日本からさまざまなバックグラウンドを持った学生が集まり、議論を行ってまいりました。月例勉強会に加え、大学教授や活動家、除染作業に携わった元米国軍人など、多くの有識者からお話を伺うこともできました。その集大成として作成したのが、日本国外務省に向けた政策提言です。本日の発表を通して、若者が核問題に対してどう考えているのか、政府にどのような行動をとってほしいのか、肌で感じていただけたら幸いです。それではテーブル2の皆さん、よろしくお願いいたします。Table 2, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you to our excellent MCs. And yes, my name is Shinsaku Takikawa, the chief of Table 2 on nuclear politics, what we can do for a world free of nuclear weapons. We have produced a policy proposal toward the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan as a final outcome of our activities. I'm honored to present this proposal today, together with Mr. Bansal and Lin. Our policy proposal begins with an introduction part, introducing the structure of this proposal. We firstly provide some context related to nuclear weapons in the world. Next, we define the target area and problems to be addressed. Followingly, we make a proposal on what actions we want the Japan MOFA to take. We also suggest two topics, disposal and colonialism, to be discussed at this institution. So starting with the background section. Excuse me. Oops. Excuse me for the disorganized. Yes. Starting from with the background of this issue, in today's world, approximately 13,080 nuclear warheads, including 3,825 deployed ones, are estimated to exist. In order to address this situation, the international community has enacted a lot of treaties as listed on the slide. Besides, nuclear weapon-free zones play a significant role in the discussions of nuclear disarmament. Bringing the focus onto a more specific region that includes Japan, the Asia Pacific has several organizations that address nuclear weapons issues, such as ASEAN+3, APEC, the Council for Security Cooperation in the Asia Pacific, CSCAP, Six-Party Talks, and the Ulaanbaatar Dialogue. However, we argue that Japan and neighboring countries seem not ready to even discuss the issues of nuclear weapons because the region lacks a regional institution for conflict resolution that can be seen in other regions of the world. In addition, the existing institutions mentioned earlier are not attended by the countries sacrificed for nuclear testing, such as Marshall Islands, as perpetual members. So they could lack perspectives of populations most affected by nuclear weapons. In a report, the Japanese government actually recognizes the need for promotion of nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament in the context of regional security. However, this situation, lacking a regional platform for dialogue, could be a hindrance to the realization of such plans. In order to address these issues, we propose establishing a complete regional mechanism for the resolution of security and nuclear issues between countries. Let me explain the traits, steps toward this goal, and limitations of this strategy. First, the regional mechanism will include the entire Asia-Pacific region. This is because this area includes 4 nuclear weapon-free zones, which will contribute to adding perspectives on denuclearization. The precedents could include the Organization of American States, OAS, and the Council of Europe, COE. The platform should be dedicated to promoting regional good faith and thus creating the sense of secureness in the region and diplomatic channels for emergency calls. We believe that this strategy will result in extending perspectives toward the nuclear big picture. Next, the actual steps to be taken should begin with one country taking the lead, which we hope Japan will do. Specifically, small localized negotiations appear most reasonable to firstly solidify basic understanding of nuclear weapons issues. Followingly, further large dialogues should happen on the initiation of legally binding mechanisms and instruments. With these foundations being set, we finally expect the birth of a formal institution for constant discussions among the Asia-Pacific countries. In the longer term, we suggest progressing the discussions toward the eventual creation of a nuclear weapon-free zone. However, this strategy could also face some limitations, which is important to note here. The limitations include the obstacles of cultural and political differences, leading to potential polarization on the platform. For example, the region might experience regional incoherence owing to the US nuclear umbrella in Asia and DPRK's nuclear interest. Therefore, it seems considerably challenging to achieve denuclearization in this region in a short term. However, we believe that the strategy we have listed will contribute to the denuclearization of this region. So next, Mr. Banslow will discuss the specific topics to be discussed at this institution.
Okay, thank you so much, Chris. So basically with disposal, we came up with 3 major things, and today that's what I'm going to tell you about. One is the limitation of NPT, the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty itself. So 4 out of 9 nuclear states have not signed the treaty so far, and it actually turns out to be a major hindrance in limitizing the total cooperation towards disarmament. And this is one of the reasons what we felt could actually be dealt with if we could have a little bit more, cooperation between the nuclear states, and if they agree to go for denuclearization or at least disposal or abide by the NPT combined or as collective. So getting to our second point, limitations in technology of disposal of nuclear materials. So we came up with these 2 major things amongst the limitations within the technology. The technology so far for disposal of nuclear materials has not been developed so much. And the 2 major things that usually nuclear states do when they dispose of nuclear weapons is to turn, plutonium into MOX fuel. The process of doing that is actually adding uranium to plutonium that makes it MOX fuel, and the burning of this MOX fuel in nuclear reactors is called actinide burning. This is one of the processes which has been deemed a little bit more environmental friendly and long-term sustainable. However, the other method that most of the countries so far have been doing is burial, where you just simply dig a hole in the ground about 70 to 80 meters down, and you just put down the nuclear materials, cover it with a crater, but it actually comes with a risk, which is what I'm going to talk about. So burial process itself is very expensive. It cost the United States of upwards of $60 billion. It took them about 40 to 60 years on an estimate to see these nuclear materials getting disposed within the environment, and we see risk of Marshall Islands again, with the ruined islands and the craters leaking within the oceans. And that is why we feel that Bural itself can be very dangerous for the environment. And that is why we have come up with what can actually be the future of disposal in the third point, and what can be the pragmatic alternative. So of course, we know with the limited technology, the only alternative we have at this moment is actinide burning. That means we will have to find a way where we can burn that much fuel. Well, the problem is that even with the NPT in 51 years, we've seen there is a drastic fall in the total number of nuclear weapons. However, the quantity of plutonium that is left after decomposing or decommissioning these weapons still remains. And that is why we need other friendly countries to come up and to use the plutonium as MOX fuel and burn it into their nuclear reactors, for which we feel that countries with resources and technologies can cooperate towards developing more cost-effective and environment-friendly disposal practices, firstly, and secondly, they can come up together. For example, countries like Japan, which do not possess any nuclear weapons, however, have an expertise in civil nuclear technology, should work towards developing and constructing nuclear power plants in developing countries which are energy hungry or which do not have adequate resources for energy, but still are developing economies and can use nuclear power plants for that use. And third, coming to efforts towards making the transportation and use of MX fuel as safe as possible to avoid preventable disasters like the ones we've seen in the Fukushima leak, or we have seen the radiation leaks in a lot of Marshall Islands or other craters all around the world. And that is why we feel that this can be the future of disposal. Now, I would like to call upon Lynn for his, for his colonialism and education presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Bansal. So nuclearism is tightly connected to colonialism. Nuclear colonialism happens not only from the actual deployment of nuclear weapons, but rather starts from the very root of the nuclear industry. For example, the mining and the enriching of uranium is happening in marginalized Black and indigenous communities in the United States and in African nations, especially that in Niger. The national resources put into the maintenance of nuclear weapons could have been used otherwise for social release for these communities, as we argue. Due to the effect of NIMBYism, nuclear waste left over by the industry is often stored in the land and marginalized, sometimes indigenous communities, as in the case of the Dao people under Taiwanese current administrations. Most importantly, the testing of nuclear weapons significantly impacted the indigenous communities around the Asia-Pacific region. United States, for example, tested 67 nuclear weapons in the Marshall Islands, causing the removal of Marshallese people from their ancestral land, an intergenerational health problem that is even still around today. Next page, please. Japan was once a prominent colonizers in the Asia-Pacific region. However, Japan also had a history of nuclear suffering mutual to these communities. We therefore propose that Japanese government and youth learn from both its history of colonization and nuclear suffering and utilize the agency of reckoning to relate and facilitate cooperations and dialogue in the Asia-Pacific region. The year 2021 is the 76th anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This year, as a table, we propose that Japan takes the initiative of creating a regional platform, or better, institution for dialogue dedicated to nuclear weapons issues in the Asia-Pacific region, especially that in Northeast Asia. We hope that the specific topics of disposal and colonialism be discussed in the platform of proposal. This finally, as a table 2 envisages Japan secured by regional trust and cooperation rather than the deadly threat of nuclear weapons. And this is the end of our presentation. Thank you for your patience and sorry for the overtime.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We have sent the feedback form in the chat, so please also take a moment to fill in.
Right. 発表ありがとうございました。テーブル2のアンケートをチャットにてお送りいたしましたので、ぜひご協力いただきますようお願いいたします。
Furthermore, Table 2 has received the support of mentorship from Mr. Akira Kawasaki, Peace Vote Executive Committee member, and from Professor Holly Barker from the University of Washington. Table 2 also welcomed numerous guest speakers, including Ms. Sumiko Hatakeyama, Peace Vote International Coordinator, Ken Brownell, Atomic Cleanup Veteran Activist, and Ash Anthony Maria, intern for the Cleanup Veteran. Thank you very much for your tremendous support.
なお、テーブル2の活動では、ピースボート共同代表、川崎明様、 また、米国ワシントン大学人類学部教授ホリー・ベイカー先生